Melissa, do I have your go ahead?
Sure, go ahead.
Welcome everyone to the third webinar on the topic of environmental justice and environmental racism, organized by the British Columbia chapter of the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, or CAPE BC. My name is Margaret McGregor and I'm a CAPE member, and I'm zooming in today on the traditional and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. My co-chair is Austin Heffernan, and I'm going to ask him to introduce himself and briefly describe the question and answer process, and then we'll continue on with the meeting.
Hi everyone, my name is Austin Heffernan. I'm a second year UBC medical student, CAPE member, as well as a member of UBC Enviromed, and I'll be co-moderating today with Margaret. So just to give a quick introduction for the Q&A period, which will be happening after each individual's talk, we're going to be using either the chat function, the Q&A function, or if you feel more comfortable, you can post it in the Slato link, which has been linked. There's a link placed in the chat, and please use the code and upvote the questions that you find most resonate with you.
Thank you, Austin. So the goal of the meeting today is really to learn about the link between Indigenous and environmental justice. And we're lucky to have two very powerful speakers on this topic. First, who will be up is Slato Molly Wickham, and next, Elder Francois Poulette will share their insights. And after each talk, we'll have a question and answer period. So think about the questions you have. But before starting, I would like to invite Elder Francois Poulette to do a smudge and prayer to open our meeting. And please know that we'll be giving Elder Paulette's impressive bio just before his talk. So for now, over to Francois for his smudge. Thank you, Francois.
Thank you. I have sage burning here. I just want to welcome you all to this webinar talk on the environment, rights, climate change, and there are great changes to our balance to Mother Earth. And most of the time, and the biggest impacts that is made by man. So I'm just going to say a prayer in my own language. And I think I want all of you that are on the call just to think in the best way and pray in the best way that you know how. Petari dreid don't see masi nor see. No ni tana tai kli si bet dre ni ke na sa te si ha te si ta banai ke de. Re tana chani e si ta si ne de. Re kota to tine ni si te de. Re tu anu si bet ai ta si cha tiu e kota de zu cho lot in no pau. Hada betara ta don't see but I kisi ta you nor tiu nor new nor tiu ke salant and a day had do no skete. Tre has kana si nor kani til city baloni. Eti na kisi bazi had do not turn day you know skete. Hada I don't see can as all masi nor see. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Elder Poulette. It helps to set our shared intention in coming together this evening. So thank you, really appreciate it. I am now going to introduce our first speaker, Slato Molly Wickham. Slato, where are you? Can you turn on your camera? Are you there? Yay. Slato's a spokesperson for the Gatimdan checkpoint on Wet'suwet'en territory. She holds the name Kazi, which means grizzly house, and has been living on and occupying the territory since 2014 with her husband and children. Gitumden Checkpoint has been an Indigenous reoccupation site since 2018 and has been raided twice by militarized RCMP, once in January 2019 and again on February 5th, 2020, as a result of grassroots resistance to the Coastal GasLink pipeline project, which would bring fracked gas to the from northeastern BC to an LNG terminal near Kitimat. Slato has her master's degree in Indigenous governance from the University of Victoria and is heavily involved in the Wet'suwet'en clan governance system. Welcome, Slato, and over to you.
Hadi, sai Slato Sydney, Gitumden Hesley, Wet'suwet'en Isden, Francois, Masai no Disney, and Cape, Masai no Disney, Llodispin Mustai. My name's Molly Wickham. I hold the name Slato in Cassia House, which is Grizzly Bear House, as Margaret had introduced me. Thank you so much for the prayer, for opening us in a good way, and for inviting me to talk about issues today. And I apologize that I am not as prepared as I would like to be, or as I normally am. We've been dealing with a few deaths in our community just over the past few days, and so it's taken a real toll on all of us here. I live on Llodispin, which is our territory in Cassia Grizzly House. It's currently a front line in resistance to the Coastal GasLink pipeline, and we're experiencing a lot of turmoil and fallout from colonization, but also from this pipeline project that our hereditary chiefs have all stood up in our feast hall and denied consent for this project to go forward. And there are a number of reasons why we've done that. And I think that the experiences that we've had this week as a nation and as communities really speaks to the fact that that this environmental racism that's happening, that the impacts on our territories that are happening from projects like Coastal GasLink, but from other industrial projects that go ahead and push through without consent of the Indigenous people, has a real life impacts on the ground day to day for our people, for our health, for our wellness. And it's because our health and our wellness are deeply, deeply tied to our land. And so we've had these losses over the last few months and over the last few days that have really impacted us. And it really speaks to the fact that as Indigenous people, we rely heavily on the land for our healing, for our health, for our mental wellness, for our spiritual wellness. And because of projects like this, and because of colonization and environmental racism, there are impacts that most couldn't or wouldn't understand unless they actually, spend a day out in Gitumden territory here. To give you an idea, we wake up in the morning to at least 4 or 5 helicopters that fly over our occupation site before 9:00 a.m. We have RCMP and private security forces that surveil us and our children and our family and our community members daily, and that put our people at a huge risk of the stress that comes with having an industrial project like this being pushed onto us, the stress of the threats by RCMP and the threats by this company to be forcefully removed from our territory, the threat of being separated from our family, from our community, from our land, from our children, and put in jail because we are upholding our laws as Indigenous people, because we are upholding our responsibility to all of our relatives, to our to the winged relatives, to the four-leggeds, to everything. We describe our territory as our yinta, and yinta means the land and everything that relies on the land, everything that is interconnected with the land, the air, the water, the animals, the insects, the humans. That's all part of our Yinta, and it's under Wet'suwet'en law, it's our responsibility to protect our Yinta for the future generations, that we are caretakers of this territory. And so when we see threats like this and we're having to deal with this, the fallout from that and the security, the harassment, on a daily basis for the last 2 years, over 2 years, it really takes a toll on our health. It takes a toll on our well-being. It takes a toll on us spiritually. And this is not a new thing to Indigenous people. This is not a new concept. It's not a new idea. It's not something that we haven't dealt with before. Since the time of contact, Western society has accepted the fact that it's okay to do business as usual on Indigenous land. And they've accepted that fact on the premise that Indigenous people don't own the land. And that premise is deeply rooted in racism, in the racist ideology that we didn't have as Wet'suwet'en people, that we didn't have a governance system, that we didn't have ways to take care of ourselves, that we didn't have ways to manage our territories and our lands. And so they were up for the taking, that they were empty, they were not being used, that we were savages and not human enough to deserve the same rights as other human beings. And so when we see projects like this happening, it's an extension of that very early form of racism. Because today still the governments don't recognize us as a sovereign nation. They don't recognize that we have our own laws, and Western laws are definitely, seen as superior to Wet'suwet'en law. And, a prime example of that is when the police come and raid our occupation sites, our communities out here on the territory, and they feel justified in doing that. And they call it their rule of law. And that presumes and assumes that Western law is the rule of law, that Indigenous law and that Wet'suwet'en law that they're not rational, that we don't have any legitimacy. And so the fallout of that in terms of our health and our wellness is that our people can no longer go to our land to heal. When there's helicopters flying over your territories back and forth on a daily basis, when the RCMP come to you and harass you and threaten you with arrest when you're doing your ceremonies on your territory, you cannot go to your territory to heal. The one place that used to be a refuge to us to go to try and heal the wounds of colonization, to try to carry out our ceremonies, for those that still know those pieces and that know the land intimately, we cannot carry through with those pieces of us, those pieces of our identity. And that is very tragic for our people, because we've already experienced so many policies and so many attempts to annihilate our spirituality, our practices, to annihilate our governance systems. And so this is one more attack that's being accepted by government, that's accepted by law enforcement, so-called law enforcement in British Columbia, in Canada, and that's being accepted by many people in society. And so it's very, very important that people understand how intimately connected we are to our territories and why we're doing what we're doing. One of the main reasons that the hereditary chiefs of the Wet'suwet'en declined consent to this project is because of the man camps. There are man camps all along the Coastal GasLink pipeline route that are being developed and that are being occupied right now. We have one on Gedimdin territory. There's another one in our neighboring territory, about They're probably, you know, maybe 40 kilometers away from each other. All along the route, there will be man camps deep into the heart of Wet'suwet'en territory, places where there have not been people since our ancestors walked the trails over the mountains, places where there are ancient sacred burial grounds where our ancestors were buried along the Queese War Trail when they went to war with the Kitimat people. And there will be huge encampments of people, of men, mostly men, coming into our communities and creating a huge risk to our Indigenous women. We live along a highway called the Highway of Tears. And it's called the Highway of Tears because for generations now, in my lifetime and my mother's lifetime and my grandmother's lifetime, our women have been going missing and found murdered along this highway through Wet'suwet'en territory. The same highway, the same route that the Coastal GasLink pipeline is trying to create and putting these man camps in. Already we've seen a significant number of our women being harassed, being sexually assaulted, being targeted, being hunted down by these men that come in from sometimes different countries, sometimes different provinces, and there's no consequence to their actions. You know, we just went to court and we've tried so many different avenues of resistance to this project because of the impacts that it will have on our community, not only the environment, but the health and well-being of our community members. And one of the arguments was that Coastal GasLink did not consider the inquiry into murdered and missing Indigenous women and the report and the recommendations that came out of that inquiry. And so we have to look at these impacts of what this is doing to our people. We have to be able to look at the consequences that are happening. And I think that putting pressure on the provincial government, putting pressure on the company, putting pressure on the province to place restrictions on these companies for the man camps, for their involvement in the spread of COVID-19, and for the impacts that it has on us spiritually and culturally on our territories, that we can no longer access them. And so I encourage everybody to try to learn more about what's happening here in Wet'suwet'en territory, because the fight is definitely not over. We've been here for 2 years. Unistoten's been there for 10 years. We're not going anywhere. We know that our survival depends on this project and other projects like it not going through. So thank you so much for listening to me today. And I'm looking forward to hearing more from Francois and answering any questions you have. Ms. Saif.
Thank you so much, Slato, for your presentation. Before starting the question and answer period, I'd like to invite listeners to make a donation to Wet'suwet'en Nation efforts. And Molly has sent us a couple of links that I'm hoping Melissa will post. Yeah, they're on the chat right now. So I encourage the listeners to dig into their pockets and contribute to the fantastic efforts of Wet'suwet'en Nation to resist colonization, and in particular this Coastal GasLink pipeline project. So I'm just looking in the question and answer section, and I don't see any questions right now. However, I'd like to ask a question to Molly, which is whether you can share with us some of your insights and experiences around the successes of the nation in the resistance movement, because really Wet'suwet'en has been a beacon, not just in BC, but across the country for a number of years now. And there seems to be lots of very hard but also joyful things, including something called the Healing Center. So I'm hoping you can kind of give your thoughts on successes of the struggle, and like you say, you're strong.
Thanks. Yes, sometimes we get so caught up in the all the bad things that happen, and I said to somebody one day, I'm like, I'm so sick of talking about all the horrible things that happen to me every day, or that happen to us every day. So thank you for asking that question. We've had huge success in reoccupying our territories. One of our main beliefs is that, you know, we're stronger when we're on our territory. We're stronger when we are living on our territory, living the way that our ancestors lived, and following their teachings and the laws. We have our occupation site at Gidimden Checkpoint. Over the past year, we've occupied another site that's very close to us, that was an old ancestral village site that we shared and invited the Giksan to come and harvest with us at Lamprey Creek. And now we have 3 tiny houses there that by the end of the month will be fully solarized and off-grid, and for our community members to come and stay and be on the territory with us, but not directly on the front line. Unistoten has created a multi-million-dollar healing center. And so they have families that come to the healing center and spend time out on the territory. And this speaks volumes to the way that our people healed on the land. They don't have a lot of infrastructure set up in terms of, daily counseling appointments or drug and alcohol counselors. But I've seen families go through the healing center, and I've seen individuals go through the healing center that have struggled with addiction, that have struggled with mental health their whole lives, and have come out the other side extremely healthy, strong, spirited, and that today are still thriving as Indigenous people, as Wet'suwet'en people. And, you know, those things, you know, it's hard to quantify those, but to know those people and to know the work that they've done and the way that the land has supported them is amazing. We have another clan, Laksamisu, that also created a village on an old village site. Many of our old village sites were occupied by forestry, and that were created and made into campsites by the Ministry of Forests. And so Wet'suwet'en have been very successful in reclaiming those sites as our own and to build infrastructure on those sites. And so now we have 3 villages out in the territories, you know, an hour on logging roads out from the nearest towns and communities. And these villages are thriving with people, with new infrastructure, with new homes for people to live in. And so we strongly believe that this is how we are going to win this fight, that we need to know our land intimately. We need to be able to monitor our land intimately. And we are stronger as individuals and as a nation when we're on our land. And so I'm really proud of all of the work that everybody's done and all of the people that have supported us to do that work.
I think you're muted, Margaret.
We're getting a few questions coming in now. One asks, thank you for this presentation. Slato, and it's from John Price, how are the hereditary chiefs working through the issue of governance with band councils?
Yeah, thanks for that question. The band council system has been in place for a very long time, for generations, but it's not our traditional system. And so a lot of the people who are in positions of power within the band council systems are also members. All of the people that are in the band council systems are also members of our clan system. And so our clan governance system is the law that we follow and the system that we follow. And that's the duty and responsibility of the hereditary chiefs to ensure that that system survives. And so the hereditary chiefs have been working with their clan members, trying to be inclusive of the bands in the MOU talks that were happening after the raid that happened last year. And in those kinds of discussions, because the band councils they only have jurisdiction over the reserve. And that's what they were designed for, was to be a municipal government of sorts over the reserve lands. And so a lot of the work that they have to do is to ensure that the roads are safe, look at housing on the reserve, and those kinds of other, those types of other work. But the work that happens in regards to what does or does not happen on the territory and the management of all of the lands on the territory, that belongs to the clans and to the clan chiefs to engage in their clan governance decision-making processes. And so, of course, the band councils were put in place to undermine our hereditary system, and the chiefs have been very clear that they don't want to be in conflict with any of the band councils. The band councils are there to do a job. They're responsible for taking care of the reserve communities, and that's an important thing for them to do. And so they've been trying to work with the band councils in how we're going to move forward from this, because we know that it's not our people that are trying to create divide and trying to create conflict within our communities. We know that there's oftentimes, persuading, bribery, and sometimes outright extortion of band communities and the band councils in dealings such as Coastal GasLink.
Thank you. There's another question here. Slato, could you tell us more about the connection between land and Indigenous health and some examples of how health professionals can support it?
Sure. So one of the things that I believe is true is that everything about us as Indigenous people comes from our land. Our language comes from our land. Our songs come from our land. Our medicines come from the land. And so I think that it's very important for us to physically just be on the land, but also to have access to our medicines, to have access to the knowledge about our medicines and our foods and all of the things, the way that we lived our lives that made us healthy people, that made us strong people. And I think that, there's a number of ways that healthcare professionals can support that connection to land. We can't assume that everybody has that knowledge because of colonization and the impacts and the policies that have been put in place. But for people that do have that connection, or finding places like the healing center that, people could go to that are land-based, looking at taking into account a trauma lens in how we're interacting with people, Indigenous people that have experienced the fallout of colonization, even just things like acknowledging and recognizing the medicines that we take. Oftentimes I've gone into a doctor's appointment with something wrong and tried to talk about, something that I was going to take. And if there's no knowledge of that, sometimes it can be seen as inferior to Western medicine. Sometimes it can be seen as dangerous if people don't know or aren't comfortable with how it's used. And so that sometimes prevents Indigenous people from feeling like they want to bring it up, or feeling like they are okay to go and access those medicines or to use them. One particular case is, my mom struggled with breast cancer, and we have a lot of Indigenous medicines that she could take and that she would take, but was advised not to take because there just wasn't enough information about those medicines. So I feel like really encouraging people on a day-to-day basis, but also creating space within the healthcare system for Indigenous knowledges and Indigenous practices. I think probably other places are a lot better at doing that. Here in the North, northern BC and our rural communities, we experience a lot of racism in the healthcare system. People don't feel comfortable to go to healthcare practitioners often, let alone to talk about our practices and what we might feel good about doing for our own health.
Thank you. So essentially, decolonizing the healthcare system is a good task. The other thing, just more directly, is going back to the link and providing some financial support. All healthcare professionals, they can, maybe make a donation on that regard as well. So this last question is, what are the most impactful ways for healthcare professionals to act as allies? And I feel like you kind of answered that already, but if you have any other tidbits you'd like to throw in there, we'll make that the last question.
Great, thanks. I think that including Indigenous voices is a great start in the health discussion, and one of the biggest things that we've been struggling with lately is the COVID pandemic. Obviously, everybody has been struggling with that. In our territory, we're really struggling with the man camps and the fact that this project in particular is considered an essential service. We have all kinds of workers coming into our communities and spreading COVID. In December, we had 3 elders, language speakers, that died within 1 month, directly linked to CGL workers. We did have some great support around letters to Bonnie Henry and open letters around putting some restrictions on the Coastal GasLink project in terms of COVID-19. We're still experiencing that. We have RCMP that come into the communities from all over the province. They don't come from here, and they come in and out every week, and they're allowed to travel. They're allowed to come from the Lower Mainland into our communities and put our people at risk of contracting the virus. I think that putting pressure on the province, within the healthcare system, within the northern region, the northern health region is really important, and they're not, people aren't listening to us, but I think that they will listen to other healthcare practitioners like yourselves. So thank you.
Thank you for those suggestions. I'm now going to, and for the audience, there will be lots more opportunity at the end of the session to ask questions to both speakers. But over to Austin now to introduce Elder Francois.
Thanks, Margaret, and thanks, Slato. It was a really, really great presentation. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. So our next speaker is Elder Francois Poulette, who is a Dene and member of the Smith's Landing Treaty 8 First Nation. Francois Poulette survived the residential school system before going on to become the youngest chief in the Northwest Territory Indian Brotherhood in 1971. In 1972, along with 16 other chiefs from the Mackenzie Valley, he challenged the Crown to recognize treaty rights and Aboriginal title to over 450,000 square miles of land in the historic Poulette case. Francois remains active in efforts to protect the natural environment of Dene. He has contributed to numerous water conferences in the North and has been a collaborator on several documentaries focusing on the impact of the tar sands development on the environment and peoples of Northern Canada. Over a period of 9 years, he participated in annual meetings of the United Nations COP on climate change and contributed to the Indigenous peoples' traditional knowledge articles of the Paris Agreement. He was recently named an Officer of the Order of Canada and is an adjunct professor at the School of Public Health at the University of Alberta. His well-being and strength continue to derive from his relationships with his family and the ancestral lands of the Dene Silne. And I would like to warmly welcome Francois to this presentation.
Salotina. This word is, I'm just saying, all my relations. I am thankful to be here this evening to speak about a life long before what a beautiful territory lands that we had. I just want to say that before Columbus came here, that our people, there was no sickness, there was no cancer, no diseases that killed off people. And how do they know this? People, archaeologists that dig up bones and you find that there is, before contact, there was no sickness. I wanted just to say that. I think it's important that that this talk is around who I am. I am a Denisonthina. I'm always talking about my Denechania. My Denechania is very descriptive of who I am as a human being. I come from a matriarch system. My wife is a midwife. She plays a major role in the community. I'm a servant to Mother Earth. I'm also a servant to the womankind. To understand Mother Earth, from the day I was brought into this world, living in a bush, living on the land, gave me a lot of strength, because my Denechanya gave me my spiritual laws, my environmental laws, my emotional, my mental well-being, and of course, the physical. These laws transcended through time, and it's changed to some degree because of colonization, assimilation, and I just want to share a story. Over 300 years ago, the English people arrived on this part of the world at the Hudson Bay. They were after one thing, and that was fur. The English people and the Hudson Bay colonized our people. I think our people at the time didn't really know the extent of what damage that they were doing to the animals, taking thousands and thousands of animals. And today we are suffering because of that. But there was a famous leader, a leader that existed that day. His name was Matanabe. Matanabe had a huge following, had a huge army. And he sided with the English. And during the 7-year war between France and the English, the French took over the Fort Prince of Wales on the Hudson Bay that our people built with the English. When this fort was taken over by the English people, by the French people, Matanabe's tribe, his warriors were not there to defend the fort. And Matanabe had a huge monopoly on the fur, the coming and going of the fur. This takeover by the French devastated him. At a very young age, Matanabe takes his own life. This is the first recorded suicide amongst our people. And to this day, the suicides are skyrocketed. And our then laws that we had followed our people, and all the traditional teachings that we carried with that. And these were very, very, very straightforward laws: respect, humility. Everyone, I think, harnessed that belief system: humility, wisdom, love. And this domination of the Europeans since they stepped foot on North America before Columbus, their number one intent was to colonize, to assimilate, to Christianize, and take away our lands. That we were subhuman to them. And our people slowly turned their backs on their laws. I'm not saying all of them. And the young lady that spoke before me mentioned the Indian Act of 1867. That was a racist policy, racist law. Their whole intent was racist, to dominate us. Here in the north, where I live, in Treaty 8 and Treaty 11, oil was struck in Norman Wells. And that's when Treaty 11 was made. That is 100 years ago. Fossil fuel today does more damage than any other resource that I know of. The tar sands that's just south of me, about 160 miles upriver, has impacted our people. We have done research, we have done films. Even one time we brought in James Cameron to come and support us. I brought him in. A lot of impact. Bishop Tutu from South Africa. A lot of people have come in to support us. But unfortunately, that tar sands is still moving, is still going. The tar sands has damaged our river system, has damaged the fish population. About 10 years ago or so, the people of Fort Ship were told that they cannot eat the fish anymore. And they were also told that they couldn't swim in the water. Their children couldn't move in there. That they were forced not to eat the fish, they were forced not to eat the moose. My backyard is the Wood Buffalo National Park. All of my life, I've known buffalo. And we were told not to eat buffalo in that part of the world also. This impact, not just the humankind, but it impact everything. Because everything for us is alive. Everything is living. Water, It's alive. It has a spirit. It has a heart, it has a mind, it has a body. The buffalo, the four-leggeds, the wingets, the birds, everything. They have their place, the swimmers and the creepers. Yeah, everything is caring. They respect. They're accepting. That's how I grew up. But residential school, to some degree, really tried their hardest. I was stolen from my family when I was 6 years old. After 3 years or so, I ran away from that place, never looked back. I will say one thing about the 10 Commandments. Christianity, the Bible, the 10 Commandments, it has one, I was forced to read that. It says, thou shalt not steal. At a young age, I was thinking, wow, these people stole me from my family. They are trying to take my language. And I never went beyond that thou shalt not steal. I don't know what's after that. Anyway, that's not important. What's important is I knew what those people were up to. Rights. And I was mentioned domination. The doctrine of discovery. The whole process of policy is all based on domination. It's right to this day. Every aspect, the RCMP. The RCMP traditionally that came into our country, that was not their business to interfere with our life. That's what the treaty says. And he didn't do that. I'm appalled that the Prime Minister stands by and he allows the RCMP to go into the territory of Mali. That is appalling. Do you see on their cap, they have this buffalo, this majestic buffalo head. This majestic buffalo head is a huge symbol to us. But they dishonor that. So, rights, the Poulette case, when we filed the Poulette case in '72, we won the case that we had prior interest in over 450,000 square miles of land, including the Nishka case that won the same kind of court case in 1973. These two cases propelled our people that we had rights to lands, our language, our history. It was quite the time. The Berger inquiry. Mr. Berger, that comes from British Columbia, he passed away not too long ago. I was asked to talk about him. And he did hearings for 2 years. At the end of his 2 years, his recommendation that there be no pipeline built. After all, the land claim settlements are over. And to this day, the pipeline is not built. And I'm very happy. I don't need the pipeline. We don't need the pipeline. We don't need the gas. We don't need the oil. I just want to say one thing here. 1977, I was a young chief, and there was a delegation of us from Canada to stay, the Native Americans South America, we went to Geneva. This travel to Geneva, we were seeking a seat at the United Nations. We were seeking a seat at the UN. But somehow, they didn't want to give us a seat. And this is where UNDRIP came in. If you can understand that history, I'm pretty familiar with it. But they don't even follow UNDRIP. Canada, I hear, was the biggest obstacle in writing UNDRIP. It's this fossil fuel is in every aspect of in our homes. It's the electricity, the power that comes from our lands. We have plastic, we have gasoline, we have naphtha. We are really struggling at this time with fossil fuel. There are a lot of countries, third world countries, as we call them, are opposed to that. I've been to 9 climate change summits. Lots of people go there. Some places, 40,000 people. Just think about that, 40,000 people. To adopt a resolution at that summit. They wanted to go to 1.5 degree. All it needs one country not to support that. One country. The last COP meeting I was there speaking at the same time here in Inuvik, talking about 1.5, it was 3.5 degrees warmer in Inuvik. That's the Arctic Ocean. But the countries that opposed were the UN, the United States, Saudi Arabia, these big time fossil fuel people. And I remember the Saudi Arabia stood up and I spoke after them. Yeah, I was kind of very disappointed in them. But that's the way the rule is. And I said then, if you people that come here that want to do some work in this climate crisis we're in this world, you people that support fossil fuel, stay home. Stay home. Let the people that want to make changes to the climate be here at this meeting. So, UNDRIP, COP, climate change, they have introduced policy to help Indigenous peoples' protocols of traditional knowledge, which is nice. Canada supports that, but they don't implement it. They don't implement it. Yeah, it sounds good. Yeah, they'll build a pipeline through BC. They're talking about what in the world is Trudeau, his business in purchasing a pipeline. That is not his business. His business is to govern. Anyway, that's done. And I'm glad that the south of the border, that the new administration there is backing off on building pipelines. And the north, and the Alaska refuge of impacting the last refuge place of the caribou, porcupine herd, they're backing off on that to do any drilling there. Yes, we are. There's a lot of contradictions. I have contradictions. Site C, the dam they want to build on the Peace River, the second dam. They don't need that. They don't need that energy for housing or for it to go in the States, for anything. They're using that power it's going to go to computers. I'm just starting to learn that, like, computers use up more power than this home here. Some people in the States are opposed to cell towers because cell towers are causing sickness. If people study, I'm starting to learn about G3, G4. Now you look in the TV advertisement, G5. G5 is going to use more energy. So when I think about that, yeah, Site C is going to do more damage. So I encourage the people, my First Nation, that these cell towers should not be built on our territory if they were to do that. So I have many things that are out there. One of them I want to say is reconciliation. Wow. Reconciliation, what a fancy big word. But those guys, just a word, a talk. You know, in my language, when we do harm to somebody and we make amends, we say, nanalye. What that means, it means let's take down. Let's take down and start over. So if Canada is talking about reconciliation based on that, rather than their words of reconciling, then we have somewhere to go by. But now it's all about them. We're not the ones that we don't have to reconcile with Canada. What harm have we done them? I kind of try to figure that one out. What harm have we done to Canada? So when I go there, one thing about we're introducing on the land programs. Right now, this week, we're having an online program, fish camp. We're starting to do that. We're working on empowering the young people, empowering them, because they've been punished, they've been colonized. We got to get them out of that. And so that's a form of decolonizing, to go back on the land, to reintroduce our Dinajanya, our way of life, language. Language is powerful. And Molly mentioned that. The one people that we can use to support this mental health issues because of climate change, of fossil fuel, the mental health is on the rise. We have issues with our own people, and it's on the rise. Just as addiction, alcohol, drugs. And in the past, I've used the Canadian Medical Health Association. In the past, here in the territories, I've used the doctors to talk about the tar sands and the damage of the tar sands to our people. So we can, we can use them. Lastly, I just want to say, our people are being flooded as we talk. Fort Simpson is underwater. Their water is damaged, no electricity. They're evacuated to Fort Smith. Some are here, some are there, everywhere. They're displaced. And Jean Marie River. So all your rich people out there, you want to make a donation to the Deschaux First Nation for the flood victims. And right now, down the river, Mackenzie, the people are bracing for floods to Norman Wells, Good Hope, Aklavik. They're bracing for it. They're getting ready for it. It is climate change. We've had more snow this year down the Mackenzie Valley than we have ever had due to climate change. And climate change is caused by fossil fuel. Just think about it. Fort McMurray tar sands produces a third of the green gas emissions in Canada. So let's make a donation to those people. I think I should stop there. Somebody rang a bell on this side. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Elder Poulette. That was a very engaging talk, and we really appreciate your knowledge and everything that you share with us today. So I was going to provide a little fundraising pitch for Fort Simpson, as well as Jean-Marie River, but Elder Poulette provided a very eloquent fundraising pitch. So the link for the fundraiser is in the chat. So if you could please click the link, read a little bit more, and if that resonates with you, then please provide some monetary support for these communities as they're going through a lot right now. So now we're going to move on to the Q&A. So I'm just going to pull up, there's a question from Larry. He said, Elder Poulette, you have described an incredibly close relationship of Indigenous people to the land. Do you have advice for non-Indigenous people as to how we can learn to appreciate the importance of the land like you do and help preserve our environment?
Well, I always encourage people to go to the land, to travel the river systems, to go to the back doors, go to the parks. You can go to these events that are taking place all over the country in the summer. There's a lot of traditional activities are going on, dancing, powwows, hand games. Yep, and most of all is seeking out an elder that has the background or the pouch of tobacco and saying, and ask a direct question of what it is that you want to know. That's a good protocol way to do that.
Thank you so much. So there's another question. Just let me pull it up. So Elder Poulette, do you have any suggestions for how healthcare professionals can help increase support for Indigenous and environmental justice?
For a longest time, I did work in the place of human resources, cross-cultural training, intercultural training, professional training for doctors and nurses in a cross-cultural setting. And that works. And you have a 1 day, 2 day, or 3 day, or some of them were gone for a week for education, for educators, teachers. The police, they kind of shy away from that. And I can understand that. But they need it. They need it more than ever. And because we have to get away, we have to move away from this racist thinking, racist past. And training on the land, cross-cultural training, is an effective tool to do that.
Thank you. So the next 3 questions that we have are directed at both Elder Poulette as well as Slato. So we'll start with the first one. So these days, to what degree are you as a community able to practice using your medicines for health?
I'll let the elder go first, if he'd like to go first.
Well, I live out in the bush. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I haven't drank for going on 47 years. I don't do drugs. I don't smoke cigarettes. And I don't gamble. So I live a clean life. But more so, I pray a lot. I pray a lot. And up here, I'm referred to as a traditional practitioner to help people that have either physical sickness, mental ailment, and all of these things. So I am a resource here, and I'm like a middleman. Anyway, I'll stop there.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why we're fighting so hard to protect our Yinta is because we do access a lot of the territories for our medicines. And so we harvest a lot of medicines from the territory. There's a lot of really important medicine harvesting sites along the pipeline route and within our territory in Gidimt'en. I know Unistoten, they have had, last year they had a elders medicine camp where all of the elders came out and harvested medicines and made salves and made teas and instructed people how to use the medicines. It's something that I feel like we're pretty strong within our nation, that we are able to utilize a lot of the territories because a lot of the territories are still accessible. And that's why it's so important to us that we don't lose that we still can go out and that we can go out without being harassed and intimidated by pipeline workers or RCMP, et cetera. So I feel like we do have a lot of that knowledge. Over the past couple of years, we've done medicine drives where we've asked people to, Indigenous people who are making medicines, for folks to donate to Indigenous folks to send medicines to us. And so lots of Indigenous owned companies that do medicine work, that make salves or tinctures or things like that, have sent us up amazing care packages with tinctures for stress and anxiety, and for our hearts, and for salves for cuts and bruises, and bug dope and all of the things that we might need to take care of ourselves, because we don't, on a front line, we don't have time. We don't have the time that we used to have to be able to go and harvest our own medicines. And so ways that people have supported that is that people would send Indigenous owned companies funds and donations, and then for them to send us medicines that we aren't able to access here. Outside.
Well, thank you both so much for those responses. So we have a lot of questions coming in. I think everything you guys been saying has really sparked a lot of questions from the audience. So there's another question to both of you. If you could speak with any decision maker who can right the injustices being done in your territory, with whom would you speak and what would you say?
Well, as a chief, the best form of communication is you talk to the person one-on-one. When I was when I was an active chief, that's what I used to do. Go into a bureaucrat's office and just talk to them in a nice way. That's how I did business. You could write a letter, a nice written letter, and he can come back to you, and then you can write another letter, and they say they're not moving, well, and then you start talking about a lawyer. That way, you kind of shy away from talking to your lawyer. So there's many forms, but the best way is, I feel, direct communication.
That's an interesting question. I don't feel like I would like to sit down with any of the people that probably have any sort of decision-making power over the Coastal GasLink pipeline. But I do know that our hereditary chiefs have requested to have direct meetings with both with Justin Trudeau, as well as John Horgan, and that those requests have never been have never been honored. And I feel like that's very disrespectful. I feel like we've also made a great effort to reach out to Dr. Bonnie Henry around the COVID situation and the health impacts on our community because of this project. And that invitation has never received a response either. And so I feel like our chiefs are the same, they have the same sentiment as the elder described. They want to sit down with the people who are making decisions, because at our level in our governance system, our hereditary chiefs are the speakers for our clan. They're the ones that have the experience and the wagoose, the respect to be able to sit down and have a real conversation with other leaders. And they see people like Justin Trudeau or John Horgan as the people that they should be talking to. They shouldn't be talking to, their assistants or the directors of certain ministries. They should be talking to the decision makers. And so those requests have yet to be honored from our hereditary chiefs.
We have a couple other questions that are very related to this. So to both, not everyone fights for their rights and the health of their people and the environment. What was the turning point that made you start to take action?
Well, when I was a young chief, I was 21-year-old. I come from a leadership roles, responsibility. There was this pipeline, this Mackenzie gas pipeline that was to be built in our territory. And so I was, because of my background with the treaties, my father was a chief, his father, I was up to date on all of the issues that were before us. But this pipeline was a threat, a direct threat to our lands. So we filed the caveat that those lands are ours. We never surrendered or extinguished our lands. So 1973, the court ruled in our favor. So that changed the direction of how business was to flow. But now the Berger inquiry did the inquiry and asking us if we wanted this pipeline. At the end, we didn't want the pipeline, and so the pipeline was not built.
Thank you, Francois. Slato, would you like to add to that?
Sure. I don't know if there was a distinct turning point for me. I think that once our hereditary chiefs decided that they would not provide consent for this project, that put a responsibility on all of us to take a stance to support them. Once it's decided in our bathlats, in our governance hall, it becomes law. And so I feel like I feel a great responsibility to uphold our law, to uphold our system. And if we aren't following our laws, then our system will fail. Our system won't function. And so this is just as important a law as any of our laws. And I think that just growing up with this sense and experiencing and seeing all of the injustices in the world, I have children of my own, and I want them to experience a different world to grow up in. I want them to know the territory and to know their culture and know who they are, and to not have to experience all the injustices that many of us have seen through our lifetimes. And so I feel it's a great responsibility of mine to raise my children knowing that they have to protect this land and that I'm doing everything that I can to protect it for them.
Well, those turning points were very inspiring. So we have a couple more questions, but just for the sake of time, I'm just going to ask this one. So to both of you, what have you found to be the most effective strategy to get people supporting and working with you? Images, films, letters, stories?
Well, I've been kind of on the front lines all my life. The Poulette case, the Berger inquiry. But because of where I live out in the bush. And before the pandemic, I've been part of 11 documentaries, films. It's a good tool. And right now, there's film makers from Paris want to come here, but they can't come here. They got to come here to Canada, they got to quarantine 14 days, then they got to come up here north for 14 days. So I just told them to back off on it till things get a little better on the travel. But I figure that for me it's documentaries.
Yeah, I think that I agree that social media and short films, short docs have been really helpful for us, for our movement. I also think that they've been very successful because we've had a lot of opportunity over the last 10 years of fighting this struggle to make real relationships with people face to face. I think that that's something that we are struggling with right now, is being able to regularly update people. You know, if people see something on social media, it's impactful. It can be impactful, and it has been impactful, but it's not as impactful as if we've met those people face to face, and then they see what's happening to us. And then it inspires them to take action because they know who we are. They know that we're real people. They know how we live. They've been to our territories, or we've been to their territories, and having those relationships is really important for us. I wish that we could do more of that right now. I wish that we could spend, some of this time building more and more relationships. And I think that's why we saw such a huge response all across so-called Canada, is because we have those relationships with other Indigenous nations and other organizations. And then when we put the call out, people want to respond because they know us and they know what we're about. And I think that that's a really powerful thing. We also have that short doc Invasion about the Wet'suwet'en struggle, and there's a full length documentary being done and developed that should be ready by next year. Alexa.
Well, we look forward to seeing that next year. And thank you both so much for a very engaging, very impressive the talk. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure the audience has learned a lot as well. So that concludes our Q&A, and I'm sorry for those of you whose questions were not answered. Just for the sake of time, we didn't have time to get to all of them. But I'd like to thank the audience as well for taking time out of their Saturday on this beautiful day to learning a lot about this very important issue. And sorry for the sirens in the background. I live close to a busy street. And just for all the medical students that may be on the call, I just want to put a quick little plug in for CFMS Heart, which is a group within the Canadian Federation of Medical Students that helps coordinate advocacy efforts among Canadian medical schools regarding current issues in environmental health and climate change. This is a great organization filled with great people. And if you're interested in advocating for the environment, it is a great way to get involved. And there's a link in the chat. And I think Margaret would like to say a few words as well.
Yeah, I want to first thank our speakers from the bottom of my heart for really helping to educate us about these important topics. You know, as doctors, we're trained in medical school for a principle, and that principle is do no harm. And I think both of your words have given us a lot of room to think about what this means as environmentalists honoring Indigenous sovereignty. So I think you've given, you've reviewed the importance of the whole medical system, and we're learning more and more about how racism affects the system we work in. You've taught us a lot about the importance of the land and respecting the Indigenous relationship to the land. And I really want to thank you. And I hope that you will come again and talk with us again. I also want to thank CAPE staff, Melissa Lem, Kevin Liang, Celia Walker, and Larry Barzilai for all their efforts in organizing today's meeting. And a recording of the session will be sent out along with a feedback survey. And we're really interested in what you have to say about these sessions, both how this one went, but also about future topics you'd like to hear CAPE put on. And finally, I just want to say that CAPE's actually been around for over 40 years. And the main goal of CAPE is really to bring a health lens to environmental degradation, climate change, and other threats to planetary health. So, and we're campaigning at the moment to strengthen something called the Canada Environmental Protection Act, or CEPA. And if you want to learn more about it, or join or donate to CAPE, we have also put these links into the chat. And on that note, I'm going to end the meeting and really wish everyone a safe and restful weekend. And thank you again for your time and your words, and we shall meet again.
Take care, everybody.